Hello and welcome to Talking Tullahoma, a weekly podcast recapping the week's news, talking to the newsmakers, and looking ahead to upcoming events. I'm Kelly Lepchinsky, and today I'll be revisiting a discussion with local author Rick Vella. After the interview, stay tuned to hear about events that are on tap in the weeks ahead. But first, here's a look back at the week ending Friday, July 25th. Now, first up, I'll start with a note of congratulations to three members of the Tullahoma High School Future Business Leaders of America. They made history earlier this month by bringing home the first awards from nationals since the local program was founded in 2007. Thomas Cunningham earned his spot after taking first place in the state in April. He claimed ninth at nationals for his electronic career portfolio. And the team of Rathjen Vallejo and Edward Henry added another first for the program when they took fifth at nationals for Life Smarts. Now, those two had been to nationals before and placed in middle school. So with the success this year, they became the first FBLA students in Tennessee to place at both the middle and high school levels. Now, we tried to get them into the studio this week, but we couldn't make the schedule work because these aren't just future leaders. A couple of them have leadership positions right now during band camp. Now, today I've got an update on a story that I shared with you last week when I told you that a woman's body had been found near a Manchester truck stop. This week, I can report that the body has been identified. Alicia Wolf from Orlando, Florida, was found in the grassy area behind the I-24 truck stop motel that's called Truckers Inn. Now, she was last seen getting into a car at a public park in Orlando on July 11th. 3 days later, her body was discovered more than 600 miles away from home. The 40-year-old grandmother, also known as Alicia Carnley, was a street worker with a history of substance abuse. And according to Florida news sources, investigators told Carnley's daughter Aaliyah that they don't know where her mother died or how her mother died. There were no obvious signs of bodily harm. However, given her age, occupation, and the distance from home, the death is being investigated as a homicide. Now, if you have any information that could help that investigation, call the Manchester Police. On Sunday the 20th, area first responders were called to rescue a man who had gotten lodged in a tree after his parachute went off course. The man was not harmed, but he was certainly shaken up after he dangled 45 feet above the ground for roughly 40 minutes while rescue squads set off to find him, which they did by pinging his phone, so score one for jumping with your electronics on your person. Now, typically, regulations prohibit skydivers from taking their phones due to safety concerns. They are dangerous projectiles in a free fall, but many jumpers do carry them, and some drop zones even require them for just this type of emergency. The phone led searchers to a densely wooded area near the Moore County side of the Tullahoma Airport. And parachutists aren't the only things falling from the sky this month. Stargazers will soon have a chance to view the year's most popular meteor shower. That is, if the full moon doesn't get in the way. The annual Perseid meteor shower will peak in mid-August with bursts of light and color, but you may want to start looking for the burgeoning showers in late July and early August to avoid disruptions from the sturgeon moon. Now, the Perseids will peak on August 12th, but the full moon peaks 3 days earlier on August 9th, casting a lot of disruptive light into the sky. Now, the good news is there is a new moon and dark skies this week as the showers begin. And the best nights to look up ahead of that full moon start on Wednesday the 30th because there are two other meteor showers happening at the same time. Now, the best time to look up is just before dawn, but meteors may be visible at night as early as 10 p.m. Now, if a meteor doesn't burn up in the atmosphere, it hits the ground as a meteorite, and thousands of meteorites do hit the ground each year. Now, for the average person, it can be hard to tell meteorites apart from rocks. We suspect, though, that that wouldn't be too difficult for the notorious rock eater of Rutledge Falls. You see, if you're not familiar with the rock eater, he is the featured character in a children's book by local author Rick Vella, and walkers along the Rock Creek Greenway will soon get to meet the mysterious creature in Frazier McEwen Park next to the Rotary Rocket Playground. That's where a new mural is being installed featuring the notorious Rock Eater. The mural artist is none other than the book's illustrator, Sarah Andrews. Now, the Rock Eater's visit to Big Springs has inspired a sequel to the Rutledge Falls book, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that not too long after the mural is finished in the early fall. The mural will freshen up an old pump house along the creek, and it will feature an interactive scene in which children can receive a flower from the Rock Eater himself. The project is a collaboration of Tullahoma Parks and Rec, the Arts Council, and Andrew's own Lungflower Studio. So for this week's interview, we're reaching into the television archives to early last year when I spoke to author Rick Vella about the book and its illustrator.
So yeah, this is the new one right here. This is it.
Now, if I remember correctly, this is actually one that you had started and sort of put aside when you were getting the silly situation that makes Samuel smile actually out. This one had already been formulated, was percolating, was sort of on the back burner. So now it's finished. This is that book, is that right?
Yeah, you have a good memory. This is it. I think I started this, it was about a 5-year in the making book. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We had started this one. My illustrator was just, really crushing it, working on it. And I said, hey, we're going to put a pause to that. And that's when we did the Silly Samuel book. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the Silly Samuel book, you were injured, you were sick, you were in the hospital. And that's what made that, this one hadn't been finished yet. You switched gears, you went to the sloth story. What made you switch gears there? Why were you working on this one? Why did this one end up on the back burner to work on Samuel?
I think because I wanted to test the waters originally to see, I was putting a lot into this book, this Rock Eater book, and I thought, well, let's just, put the brakes on there. Let's see what happens with the Samuel book. I had never published a book before, self-published, so I thought, well, let's maybe try this one first, because I wasn't sure how well it was going to do, and it ended up doing really well, so it's been doing well. So
you already had your illustrator in place with this book, which was the first one you're working on, the second one to be published. So Sarah Andrews, if I remember the last name correctly, right?
Correct, yeah.
Is your illustrator. Now, one of the things that we talked about with the silly situation that made Samuel smile, I'm just going to call it the S book from now on.
Or the Silly Samuel one.
The silly book, is that she had to sort of start from scratch with what does a Rock Eater look like, this notorious Rock Eater? So how did you guys workshop what your Rock Eater was going to look like?
Good question. It was a lot of brainstorming, and she's an incredible artist. She really is, and she'd never really done anything like this as far as books go. And to then all of a sudden now we create this fictional creature that's not existed before. There was a lot of brainstorming, and I had some ideas, and then she had some ideas. We kind of went back and forth until we finally found this is the one that we're going to go with, and as far as the design of what he looked like. So yeah, it was a lot of creative thinking back and forth.
Now, how did you two find each other creatively? How did you begin to work on a project together like that?
Well, I had met several illustrators. I'd went to some different places where you could meet illustrators and just kind of looked at their style, and that's what I was going for. I really love the watercolor style. There's a lot of styles I like, but I really loved her style, and I've actually found her on Facebook, of all things, sent her a message, and she took forever to get back with me. So later I was talking to her about that. She said, I thought you were wanting more free work, and a lot of people would message her for free work, and I was tired of doing free work for people. And when I had offered to this would be a paying gig, then she was like, okay, let's, there's a little bit more to the story than that, but let's get together and kind of see what you want to do.
So is she local? Is she from this area or anywhere around here, or were you working long distance?
So yes, originally she's not from this area, but I think she was out of Murfreesboro at the time, and now she lives in Deckard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it came time to finishing the illustrations on this book, Rutledge Falls wasn't necessarily out of reach for her to visit or see what the background might look like.
No, I said, here's what we're doing. You're coming, I'm going to take you to lunch. She brought her little son at the time. Now she has 2 children. And I said, we're going to walk around the falls, take some pictures. I want you to just kind of feel what this place is like and try to embody a little bit of that in this book. And she really did well with it, I think.
And if I'm remembering correctly, Rutledge Falls actually has some significance to you as well, does it not? I mean, that thing you're bringing her to feel, was that something that you feel for Rutledge Falls?
Yeah, we first moved to Tullahoma in 2005, and I stumbled across, I don't remember how I stumbled across Rutledge Falls, but we did, and love hiking, love that whole experience, and just loved going there and seeing the falls. It just blew my mind how beautiful the place is. And so, yeah, we went there, did all that, and it was a regular thing that I would go back to Rutledge Falls. And so I thought this would be a beautiful place to like get people to come to and know more about. And so that's kind of what stuck with me when I ended up writing this story.
Okay. Now, I noticed in that sentence many times you said we, so we should probably give a shout out to another collaborator of yours, well, editor, I think is the way you referred to her, your wife, Sarah, with an H this time, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the whole funny thing about the H and without the H, because Sarah Andrews doesn't have an H, and she has to let you know about it, which is a funny joke that we have. And then my wife, Sarah, does have an H, which she's like, I don't mind if you don't put the H in or not. But yeah, so my wife, Sarah, she often is one to like maybe help me reword it or spell. I'm not the greatest speller. I'm very open about that, yeah. And so she'll say, you might want to spell it this way. It's the right way, you know. But yeah, so she would go with me very often, and we had our first dog at the time. Her name was Marley, who's since gone. But we would take her, and she would actually climb up the waterfalls at Rutledge Falls with me to get to the top. It was incredible to see a dog climbing up the waterfalls. So yeah, we spent a lot of time going to the falls.
Okay, now we obviously want to talk a little bit more about that collaboration because there's a lot more than just writing books that you do. We talked about it a little bit in the last episode, but we're about to go back to a commercial break. So I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and do that now. We'll come back and catch up on a little bit more about the notorious rock eater of Rutledge Falls and the importance of Rutledge Falls when we get back right after this. When severe weather strikes, stay informed about power outages with TUA's new online outage map. Visit our webpage at tub.net and click the View Outage Map icon to see the number of customers affected and where they are. Use the bottom icons to find out the cause of the outage and how long it might take to restore power. You can even zoom in to see if the outage is in your neighborhood. Call 348-1795 to report an outage. And welcome back to Talking Tullahoma. Once again, I'm Kelly Lepchinsky here with author Rick Vella, and we are talking about the book, The Notorious Rock Eater of Rutledge Falls. And we talked a little bit about how the illustrator and you had to go back and work back and forth on figuring out what the rock eater looks like. But what does the rock eater do? Tell us a little bit about what happens in this book.
Okay, so there's a boy named Levi who is actually based off of my nephew, as far as the way he looks and everything. And he takes this hike down the trails of Rutledge Falls with his dad, and this incident happens, and he stumbles across this creature, and the two of them meet, and an adventure happens, and it's interesting. And they learn to be, both to be brave and courageous after being in this whole situation of like, what do I do? Who are you? I don't know you. You're different than me. And so, yeah, that's kind of maybe a little bit of the gist of it. It's about courage and bravery and adventure.
And what led you, I know this is the one you started on first, but what led you to this particular story? Other than getting people to Rutledge Falls, what led you to, I'm going to have a boy meet this creature and this is what that incident's going to be? Was there something that prompted that idea for you 5 years ago?
Perhaps. I don't remember, actually.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I think there's always something interesting about putting little kids into funny situations, like how do they react, I guess. And so I don't quite remember where I come up with the thought of that, but I just wanted to show, I think I wanted to show that even though there's two different individuals here, and completely different in their world, and that they were able to come together for a good cause of getting back to life and to where they are. So I think that's kind of a story in itself there of like, despite the differences, you could still work together. you know, and I think
Yeah.
that's kind of something I think is important.
Now, I noticed this isn't the first time. I don't remember if the other two were nephews, but this isn't the first time that your protagonist has been named after children in your sphere. I believe Samuel and Eli were also named after people close to you. Could you expand on that a little bit for us?
Yes, yes. I don't know why I do that. I think it's connecting people that I know and love in my life into these stories, and even though they may not exactly be that particular character, I don't know, it's just neat to be able to bring these people into a story. I think it gives a little highlight on them, and maybe people can relate to it with some of the names or the individuals as well. So
Levi in this one is a real boy, so to speak, you know, to quote Pinocchio, I suppose. And he's also not the only human in this book. He's traveling on the path, I believe, with his father.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
So I know this because you read to me a little bit of some of the rhyming
Yes.
phraseology in the book. So this is a book that rhymes, and this is clearly you
Yes.
don't do that by accident. So
No.
what made you decide to do that this time around?
Well, I used to write a lot of songs, and I think that rhyming is very fun. And it's not easy to make it a story make sense, but then also rhymed. But when you've done songwriting, you kind of have a little bit of that, I guess, technique in it. And so I don't know. I just love I always loved reading Dr. Seuss type books. I remember a lot of those were just the rhyme is just his brain was interesting. Dr. Seuss books, you know, for sure. So I don't know. I like the rhyming, I guess.
And I guess in a way, could you say you made a bridge from the songwriting to the children's book writing? I mean, is that maybe where, I know we talked before, you've got a whole notebook of ideas that you keep with any kind of writing, whether it was for songwriting or poetry or I guess now children's books. But was songwriting your first writing love, or did you start somewhere else?
No, when I was a kid, I really don't remember exactly what the first things were, but when I was a young boy, I would always write a lot. I had a teacher that told me, "You're one of the most creative kids, but you can't spell." And your English is terrible. But like, I would come up with characters, or I would come up with creatures, or I would come up with ideas, and I would just, like, these are the way my brain would think. And it was often more stories than it was into music. And it wasn't until I started shifting into playing music later in my life that I wanted to start writing music and songs, and that poetic type of writing would flow into that. So then now I still do some of that, but now I've shifted more into, I don't know, I really like writing stories, in particular children's books, because, you know, kids are just fun. They're just the way their brains think. It's endless what you could write about. It's like an endless frontier of what you want to write about.
And you've had the opportunity to read some of these books in front of children. You've had some book signing events or reading events.
Yes.
And so how do those go for you? You just said
They've been great, actually. This has been a great experience with this. The first book, the first time I got to read this book was actually at Rutledge Falls with a group of, I think there was 30 or 40 kids that were kind of like in a homeschool group. And actually, my illustrator, Sarah Andrew, she was connected with that group. She's the one that set that whole thing up. So yeah, it was really neat to be able to read this book for the first time at Rutledge Falls. And yeah, it was quite an experience. So I've been able to do several of those type of things. And then I saw these one kids had previously bought this book and had brought it to Rutledge Falls. And it just was a joy to be able to see, like, these kids are like reading the book right there to each other before I was even going to read it to them. It was just great. It was just a really great thing, you know.
You know, I think that's something we probably should stick in here now, is how do people get a copy of this book?
Amazon. You can look me up, see Rick Vella author on Amazon, and then you can order it that way, and then you can look me up on Facebook under C. Rick Vella author, and then Instagram, because we're putting a lot of content out for not just selling the book, but also on tips for reading and tips to help you understand more about that world of books, and just ideas. We really try to research some of these things. September is supposed to be National Literacy Month, and there's other different tips we try to put out there for parents with their children in reading. So yeah.
Speaking of the world of books and putting tips out there for readers, up next on Talking Tullahoma, book reviewer Reba Walters joins me in the studio to talk about her latest read, Twist, by Irish writer Colm McCann.
The main characters are few, which I found interesting in that you didn't have to focus on so many people. A lot of books that seems like have so many characters you get mixed up about them, but this was very straightforward in that it was Arthur Fennell, who was a depressed and writer who lived in Dublin, had writer's block. He was depressed about his life, seeking something that he could kind of get his teeth back into writing, would catch his attention so much that it would overcome his other problems. So he got this opportunity to go to Africa and do a story about undersea cables that get ruptured. And there's a particular boat, type of boat, that goes out and fixes those ruptures when they occur. So it's a kind of an unusual thing where there's a very specialized crew, and they just basically sit around waiting in whatever port the boat is in for the call to come that there is a problem. So he goes to South Africa, meets the chief engineer of the boat, who is John Conway. And Conway is the second main character, and he is very interesting in that he is, when Arthur first meets him, he's very open and friendly, glad to have him around, no problems. But as the book progresses and Conway changes, a lot of the trajectory of the story has to do with that. So that relationship changes over time. And then the third character, who was a little bit more of a minor character, was Zanelle, who was Conway's partner. She had two children who were not his, but they lived as a family in South Africa. So as the book progresses, they get a call and they go out on the boat. And one of the interesting things is just the discussion of life on a boat at sea for a long period of time when you don't even know exactly how long you're going to be there.
Yeah.
And for the crew, of course, this was what they did all the time. But for Fennell, it was like a big change for him. It's a lot to get used to.
So what kind of cables are these that they're down there repairing?
It's the cables that transmit all kind of electronic signals under sea,
Okay.
transcontinentally.
Okay.
So it's critically important, and that's why when they go out to do these repairs, you know, it's a lot of people around the world are depending on this information transfer. So, so that was fascinating in itself. And then the whole mystery of Conway, as it develops, the longer he's out at sea, the more withdrawn he becomes and not communicative, just very focused on his work. And by the end of the book, you don't even know where Conway is. So the ending of the book sort of leaves you a little bit unsure of what happened. There's a hint of what might have happened, but it's one of those books where you don't get the full satisfaction of a fully closed story where you got the ending and you know what happened and you're okay with it or not okay with it. The other thing is about relationships. A lot of this book is sort of a metaphor about connections, with the transatlantic cables being connected and connecting the world, and then the individual people in the story and their connections with each other. You can think of broken wires as, you know, in a lot of ways. And that's what I realized as I read this. The other thing that he does is he mentions a lot of movies, and I only bring this up. I honestly didn't notice it reading the book, but when I read reviews of the book, it bothered a lot of people. They said he kept referring to Apocalypse Now.
I was thinking of that when you said Conway, because I'm like, isn't that like, what is his name, Conrad? I was like, that's very Apocalypse Now.
Yes, and the other one is, he does mention, I did notice he mentioned Heart of Darkness, which is
Which is what it's based on.
Yeah. So that, if you if you really know literature and are attuned to those sorts of things, I think would make you really enjoy the book.
Yeah, and when you said he was departing and getting further away from the reality, that's the first I was going to ask you about that. So it's interesting that it's actually referenced in the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The other thing that I enjoyed, this other perspective I had on it, was just that my husband liked it too. And there aren't that many books that we read that are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it to be a book that has so many different areas that appeal to different people, like the technology part of it. There are relationships, but it's not the main focus of every portion of the book. And just the life at sea. I think this book could appeal to a lot of people. It's also a fairly short read. I think it was not even 300 pages long.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
if that is criteria, there you go.
Well, there you go. Well, I always like to warn people, if they're going to get into something long, because so many of us read on e-readers that sometimes you
Right.
just don't know if you don't pick up the physical book what you're
Right.
getting into. And just because our references weren't totally clear, the movie Apocalypse Now is used as a thematic touchstone in this week's book. That movie was based on another book, The Heart of Darkness, and that book was written by Joseph Conrad. Conrad. It was that author's name I assumed was referenced by the character Conway, who takes a dark and isolated journey undersea rather than upriver on the Congo. If you're interested in today's book, ask about it at Lanham Library. Finally, in sports, the Tullahoma 12 and under All-Star team finished its postseason run over the weekend. After taking both the district and the state titles, the team advanced to the Southeast Regional Tournament in Florida, where they came up just short of advancing after a 2-2 split. The team thanks everyone who made the trip possible. Now, the All-Star season may be over, but a new one is about to begin. Cal Ripken Baseball is gearing up for Fall Ball. Registration is live online at tullahomacalripken.org. You will need to create an account with Sports Engine before you can register and pay. And now, here's a look at what's happening. With students returning to school next week, the fall racing season has begun, and the race to register at a lower price is also on. If you want to run in the Chambers Wobble Gobble this Thanksgiving weekend for just $25, you need to register before the kids go back to school, because the price will increase at noon on the 31st. Now, we'll tell you more about that event later this fall, but if you're familiar with it and you know you want to participate, register now. You'll also have to move very, very fast to get the $30 price on this year's Fit Beyond 5K Color Run, because prices increase on this Saturday, the 26th. You can find both events online at runsignup.com. The local Chamber of Commerce has teamed up with the Tullahoma Police and Fire Departments to present a community-wide golf tournament benefiting the Police Department's National Night Out and the Fire Department's Christmas Toy Drive. The cost for a 4-person team is $400, and the cost includes 2 carts, 4 mulligans, a box lunch, and beverage cart access. The August 22nd event will begin at 10 a.m. with a shotgun start. Registration begins at 9 a.m. And to pre-register and pay, visit the chamber at tullahoma.org. If you have some things you'd like to get out of the house and you don't want the hassle of organizing your own yard sale, drop them off at the Senior Citizen Center on North Collins Street. They are getting ready for their biggest fundraiser of the year, the annual yard sale. And this year, they need funds more than they ever have before. You can drop off your items at 410 North Collins Street or call 455-2504 to arrange for pickup. The sale will be held from 8 until 4 on August 1st and 2nd. And if you're a woman looking for a service organization that serves the community right here in Tullahoma, the GFWC Centennial Women's Club will return from its summer break in August, so it would be a great time to check them out or maybe join. If you're looking to volunteer, meet new friends, and make a difference, visit the club building at 709 Wilson Avenue at 6 o'clock on August 12th. The club meets on the second Tuesday of each month through May. And that's what's happening. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of Talking Tullahoma. If you've got a story or an event that you'd like to share on the podcast, call and leave me a message at 571-7186. I'll be back soon with more of what makes Tullahoma tick. Until then, you can listen to Talking Tullahoma on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. New episodes drop on Thursdays. Please like and share. For the video version, follow us on YouTube. Just search for TUA LightTube. I'm Kelly Lepchinsky. Catch you next week.